my mother was German, and she passed away when I was like 3, and which was in '68.
Okay.
Which was about the same time King was assassinated, and you know she committed suicide, and it was in Seattle. And at the time, Seattle, up until '67, was the only legal place where interracial couples could wed.
Right.
And so I understood at the time that it was the race in this country was at its height.
Right.
And I can't tell you what kind of what she went through, but as a result of that, I had no connection towards her side of the family. And so I was raised with an all-black family and an all-black community, and that was my heritage.
Right.
And I was the only one that looked like me in my family, which was, light. I didn't even skew light skin. It was just, I was straight up red, right? I wasn't even light skin, right? And so bright red hair, and it was odd and unique at the same time as a 3-4-year-old growing up in that environment, that I didn't look like anyone in my family or the community that I lived in, but I was also it was also unique, and so I was made to feel proud about it.
Interesting.
And to this day, it would be really, my family would find it odd that anybody called me biracial or that I considered myself biracial.
Because of that. Right. Isn't that interesting? But it's all your perceptions, all your experience.
It is. And that's when you talk about where the trust issue and that segregated aisle is. How do you care enough about people and their individual stories, and to assume that because they're this color that they identify with what you think that they should identify
what they look like they should identify with.
So it's interesting, and to know that also now, it's monumental that Ogilvy and Mathers has deemed the new, and come up with the statistics that we've always known, that the new general market is non-white.
Black women, we spend, because you know why we spend so much money on our hair and beauty products? Because we're always trying to make it something else. We're always trying to solve a problem. And I think that this is the perfect time to go into
right. Married to a culture and a people that are very colorful.
Right.
In their outward expression.
Right. So there is that. There's the drama.
Right.
That is the basket hair brands.
Yes.
The shells. There is that drama, that beauty, that grandeur. And then that stripped down to the shame of the texture of your hair.
And the shame for me is where I feel like I have a better understanding from my experience to also directly talk to that shame and to liberate women and give them a standard of hair care that hadn't existed for their hair texture, because of those few aisles that were there. How one has nothing to do with the other. How you care for one simply has nothing to do with the other. And it's funny. I grew up with not being in salons, but black women getting their hair done in the kitchen.
Yes, you did.
And there was no knowledge in my family of a salon. We were a family that was raised in the country. My grandfather was a sharecropper. My aunts got their hair done in the kitchen
by one another,
and they either used lard or lotion in their hair. But it wasn't until I was 12 or so where my cousins, of course, that kind of carries on to generations, and this is the 70s where a 10, 12-year-old boy is watching his beautiful older cousins who are goddesses as far as a teenage girl at that time was fine, right? And all you see is the joy in them wearing a press-and curl, an afro.
Yes.
I mean, the styles ranged, and there was no hair loss. there was no
that breakage, all that sort of.
no, there wasn't any of that, and it's just interesting now that we wind up and decades. I understand how hair changes or has changed over the decades to better reflect the times,
right?
But decades are short, right? Yes. And so, of course, in the 70s or in the 60s, it was about keeping your hair straight.
Right.
Because of, the one having to conform.
Right, and being acceptable and look a certain way to be.
Right. The life epitomized.
Or
the straight and narrow for black people.
Or you went exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
Or you were militant.
Right, exactly.
And you were natural and you had the big
right,
fro.
and it was fearful. Your life was dependent on whether you were going to be militant or not.